Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and in this series, we are talking about the changing coffee industry. And in today's episode, we're talking about coffee cults. You ready? Let's do it. This podcast is brought to you by Map It Forward's new Patreon community, the Global Coffee Think Tank. Check the show notes or head to patreon.com/Map It Forward to find out how you can become a member today. So, I'm fresh back from MICE. I went to listen and to observe. I had amazing conversations with a lot of different people. And the things that I came back learning blew my mind. One of the things that was particularly disturbing that I observed was the behavior of people after having been away for so long, their reaction to kind of the brands that they are and the people that they seem beholden to. And there's no other way to say this, but those brands are being cultish in the way that they are bringing people in. Now, this behavior happens all over the world in many different industries, and I'm well aware that this happens. The particular problem that I have with it in this industry is that it's shrouded in dysfunction and it's shrouded in lies. Now, what is a coffee cult, or what is a cult in general? A cult is where you have indoctrinated people into a belief system, and the cult is shrouded by dysfunction and sometimes abusive behavior, aggressive behavior. People are typically hypnotized into believing the agenda of the cult leader, and that behavior, once you have been hypnotized, you kind of surrender all decision making over to that cult. And there were a number of cults that were present, pushing their agendas and pushing their products on people. What was most concerning about it was the willingness to lie to people to convince them that their product should be purchased or their agenda should be adopted. This is particularly concerning because our industry attracts a particular kind of insecure person. It attracts people who want to belong somewhere. And those people are typically more susceptible to being convinced that they should be a part of the cult. And so what you had was cult leaders in this sphere pushing their product, lying about specific things, and then bringing on board whether they paid for it or whether they just had formed alliances, they would bring on board other brands to convince people that they had integrity based on what they were pushing. And the thing was, when I spoke to people about what they were doing and why they were doing it, their agenda was, hey, look, it's marketing. Stop being woke and understand that this is capitalism. I'm not woke. I'm not woke, but I'm not one of these super left-leaning people that's against profits. I'm one of these people who believes that there should be a balance between a values-driven business and profit. Like, make all the money you want. Just don't bullshit to people in the process. And that's a lot of what I saw there. I saw these people vacuuming up the oxygen in the room that really could have been focused on a conversation around what's going on with producers. And folks, contrary to what you might think, shit is really serious for producers. You might think that because the price of coffee has gone up, the producers are doing really well. Producers are panicking right now. I spoke to many of them. I spoke to many people who are adjacent to producers in origin countries. People are shitting themselves. And while we're focusing on products that are going to slightly improve the brewing side of things at a time when consumers are becoming more and more price sensitive, I think that our customers are going to care much less about your 1% improvement on the brewing technique of something and much more on the price of a cup of coffee. And producers are going to hurt even more when that happens. We'll talk about that when we talk about the tsunami that's coming. But this was wild. And I watched people just sort of like bow down to these cult leaders and watch these cult leaders just suck it up. So what do we do about this? Why is it such a big deal? Like, why shouldn't we just let people become like worshippers of these brands and these people? Well, because there's really, really challenging times ahead. And the trickery and fuckery is going to leave people feeling ashamed of themselves. Not the people who are the cult leaders, it's going to be the people who are a part of the cult. And typically what happens is that you become aware that you've been fooled and that you've been tricked, and you feel really ashamed of yourself being susceptible to this stuff. And that leaves you going on a downward spiral. If I speak like somebody who knows about this stuff, I used to be Catholic, so that says everything. Biggest cult on the planet. So what do we do? How do we address this? First of all, ask yourself, have I been hypnotized by a brand? Like, look at all the brands that you admire. Look at all the brands that you think you are obsessed with. And ask yourself, am I looking at this objectively? Am I supporting this brand objectively? Or am I hypnotized by what they have to say? And if you are hypnotized by what they have to say, I'd invite you to do the next thing, which is ask a whole bunch of questions. Ask if what their value statements are. Ask them to show how they stand by those values, but look beyond their answers. Because a lot of them have put a lot of money into the messaging through branding and PR, and they know the words to use to convince you. That's how you became a part of the cult in the first place. But the next thing that I want to say is speak to people who don't follow this cult. Ask them why or find people who don't like the cult. Find out why they don't like this cult. Find out what it is that perhaps puts them off from this cult. And start to think for yourself. The reason a cult exists is because you've handed over your critical thinking powers. There are a lot of people out there who think that they're critically thinking, but who are just hypnotized. If you find yourself talking again and again and again about a particular brand or about a particular person, and you worship at the altar of a particular person, you're a part of a cult. I don't care who that person is. The only cult you should be worshiping is you. That's the only cult you should be a part of. Advocating for yourself, advocating for critical thinking. We have designed this whole brand, Map It Forward, so that we can never be a cult. We don't want to be worshipped. We don't want to be famous. We don't want to be any of that stuff. We want to be a part of encouraging people to think for themselves. So we're fine. We'll never be a cult. But there are people out there that are a part of a cult and they are utterly indoctrinated, and this is dangerous, particularly as we come up to a time where we are going to have very, very challenging events. And we're going to talk about that in the next episode. But dissociating yourself from the cults the coffee cults particularly that you're a part of. I'm not saying don't admire people. What I'm saying is don't hand over all of your power from a buying perspective to become a part of a brand where you don't really know if they believe what they're telling you or whether they're lying to you to get you to be convinced of what they're selling you. And as I said, at Mice, I got to see how much so many brands are lying to their consumers, because a lot of people pulled me aside and had a conversation with me about how it wasn't quite sitting well with them that the company that they were working for or the company they had done consulting work for had been lying to the public. And that's something for you consultants out there. If you are doing consulting work for brands that you don't quite believe in, their stink will rub off on you when it finally comes out. And I just want to reiterate, I am a big fan of people being successful. I am not a fan of people being successful by cheating and lying to other people who are left vulnerable because they want to belong in an industry, because their life has had a significant amount of dysfunction. And that's what this industry is. So be careful, keep your wits about you, and prepare for the upcoming tsunami that I will talk more about in the next episode, by making sure that you are independent. Your thinking is independent. Your alignment is with yourself and with your own values, not based on the values of anybody else or any other brand. I hope you have enjoyed this discussion. Stay tuned for the next episode. Peace, love, and peanut butter, friends. Have an amazing rest of your day. Thanks, friends. If you enjoyed this video, here's what you should check out next. Consider supporting Map It Forward on Patreon, and be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell before you leave.